Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
You made a face as you were doing the intro, right between Buckeye Weekly Podcast and I'm Tony Gerdeman. And I'm wondering, were you trying to remember the name of their podcast or your name?
I felt like I said Buckeye weirdly, wrongly. But the thing is, like, if the listeners don't notice, you're supposed to just keep moving on. So, like, you're the only one that noticed it.
Mm.
But thank you for pointing out, Tom, that I paused and looked up because you wouldn't have seen that on YouTube. So thank you, Tom, who you have never done anything incorrectly or wrong. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And how are you doing?
I am outstanding. I had a wonderful, exciting morning. Got my first COVID vaccine shot. That was a lot of fun. In case anyone is wondering, like, no, you can barely feel the microchips going in. It's fine. It's no, I'm kidding. No, very easy. Doesn't hurt at all. And 6 weeks from now, I'm invincible. So you can kiss my butt, world. I'm going to be strutting around like I don't know, Homer in the New York episode, right? Right? Yeah, just striding down the street. A man about town. Can't wait.
Now,
6 weeks.
is it true that, like, in the lead up to this, you should also build up your alcohol tolerance because you'll be able to go out again, and so you don't want to go out, with low tolerance? Is that so? You need to build that stuff back up because you're going to be around people again, and when you're around with people, you drink.
And one of the best ways to do that is to gain a lot of weight.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Fortunately, there has just been snow and ice on the road, so I haven't been able to go for a run in like a month. It feels like. So yeah, so I'm really working up my way there as well. So yeah, it's been a very productive month or so. Yeah.
And next week it'll be in the 40s, which, I mean, Ohio will just be a swamp.
It's gonna feel like swimming pool weather in the 40s. It's gonna be great. Can't wait.
So, Tom, today we are continuing our spring preview, positional previews. But first, we thought we'd start with some Ohio State basketball. Still ranked number 4 in the land. They've got a Penn State game on the road tonight. Although, as we've said here before, Chris Holtmann doesn't call them road or home games anymore. They're just all neutral sites, which probably bodes well for an Ohio State team that hasn't won at Penn State since 2017 when Jayshawn Tate took from about half court running layup. He didn't shoot it from half court, but that's about where he got the ball and had a spinning layup and dropped it in for a bucket with 3 seconds left to win 71-70. Since then, however, it's been painful. Ohio State was swept in 3 games in 2018, including in the Big Ten tournament. But that 2017 win was Thad Matta's last win at Ohio State, by the way. So there is some interesting stuff there. But last year, Ohio State lost 90-76 at Penn State. In 2018, it was 79-56 at Penn State. And we know Ohio State almost lost to Penn State this year at home and had a furious comeback there. So this is one where you've got Michigan, number 3 Michigan on Sunday. But the way things have gone between these two schools, Ohio State and Penn State, and the players on these teams, there seems to be no overlooking Penn State and looking ahead to Michigan. And if there are, you're going to have a bad time. They're going to have a bad time tonight.
Yeah, I mean, going into this game for Ohio State, the good news is they've been terrible against Penn State, so they shouldn't be taking them for granted. That's I guess the good news. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Penn State team that is beatable, and you almost wonder like how much of this is just mental at this point. Just that Ohio State. I think the resume has shown like Ohio State is a pretty clearly better team on the whole and has been for a number of years and shouldn't probably be playing at this level. And there's nothing about Penn State that like screams like, yeah, this is a team that like very clearly should be a big matchup problem. It wasn't like, when Purdue had a bunch of big guys a couple of years ago and it was like, oh, this just isn't a good matchup. This is not a Penn State team that's like huge in the front court. Like they've got some good guards, but this is not a team that like absolutely seems like, I understand why this team gives Ohio State a tough time. They just kind of give Ohio State a tough time. So you would assume that would be enough to keep Ohio State focused and motivated. And I mean, like you said, Chris Holtmann was like, and coaches always make a point to say like, oh, no, we won't look past this one. That was Chris Holtmann seemed just like a little more adamant than normal that like, no. We will not overlook Penn State.
Yeah, and Penn State has beat some really good Ohio State teams over the years, and so there's no, as good as Michigan has been, you'll worry about Michigan on Friday and Saturday and deal with that. And so I think Ohio State is a 4.5 point favorite against Penn State. We'll see what they are on Sunday. I would assume a slight favorite. Maybe it's a pick 'em, something like that. Michigan was off for over 3 weeks, came back, wins at Wisconsin. Didn't look good for the first, 30 minutes or so, but credit them with coming back and winning that one relatively easy at the end. That wasn't really my first time sitting and watching a bit of Michigan because they haven't been playing forever. I wasn't super impressed, but there's so much rust there that and so you give them credit for that win. Penn State, I think Michigan beat Penn State by like 4 this year, to give you an idea. Earlier when Michigan was playing really well, so going to be a good gauge for both programs, I think, on Sunday. This is a very tough stretch for Ohio State. If they go 0-2 these next 2 games, I don't think that's any reason to panic, because losing at Penn State is that's nothing to be ashamed of. And then losing to the number 3 team is nothing to be ashamed of when there's no home court advantage. But Tom, if they go 2-0 in these 2.
Yeah. I feel like Ohio State has just spent this entire year constantly exceeding my expectations, and I'm kind of constantly pumping the brakes on like, is this? I mean, you keep seeing them projected as like a number 1 seed in the tournament. It's just like I keep wondering, is this team really a number 1 seed in the tournament? Because it seems this is a team that seems like it is very good all around. It has some stuff that's going to make them a very tough out in March, but there are some flaws. Like there are some significant flaws, especially in the defensive end of the floor. And that's the kind of thing that, you can try and be like Oklahoma in football, where it's just, well, yes, the defense is not good, but you've never seen anyone score like this. And it's like, that works to a certain point. At some point, unless you're, even when you're Loyola Marymount in the early 90s, like at some point that does catch up with you. I feel like 1-1 is a very reasonable expectation for this, because Michigan is very, very good this year. Very good this year. Michigan is Ohio State in Ken Palm right now. Ohio State's offense is 4th in the country. And it's like, man, this is an Ohio State team that just light it up. And Michigan is 7th. They're right behind them. Defensively, Ohio State is 57th. Michigan is 8th. Like they are just a better all around team right now. And, they did have a long, 3-week layoff, and they came out very slow against Wisconsin. And that's on the road at Wisconsin. That is not an easy place to win. And they were down by 10, 12 at half, something like that. And then came back and I think outscored them 40-20 in the second half. It was just like, they came out, they had a slow start and had to knock a little bit of rust off. And then, they came out of the locker room after halftime. And I was like, okay, now I remember how to play basketball. And they just completely lit Wisconsin up. And that's, this is not a top 5 Wisconsin team, but Ohio State fans know Madison is not, the Kohl Center is not traditionally an easy place to win. And even without fans, that's a building that I think has enough history that is not an easy place to win. Michigan has a bunch of guys who are really, really, really good this year. Juwan Howard has that program going in the right direction. And they've got a pretty good recruiting class coming in, I think, next year. And that is a program that's going to be around a while. And if Ohio State can knock them off, then you get into some interesting conversations about, so how are they going to determine the Big Ten champion this year? Because if Michigan wins that game, Michigan is probably, for all intents and purposes, going to be the Big Ten champion regular season. If Ohio State wins it, then Michigan has played. Right now, they have played 5 fewer games than Ohio State. So this is a little bit of a Ohio State Indiana situation in the regular season, where in football, where the Indiana winning the Big Ten championship because Ohio State didn't play enough games, like that would have had a lot more, that argument would have resonated with a lot more people had Indiana actually beaten Ohio State. Like once Indiana didn't beat Ohio State, it was like, okay, like this is if you want to play lawyer ball and win the Big Ten that way, like, okay, congratulations, great job, Lionel Hutz, LEO. But if Michigan wins this game, like there's not really a conversation. Like, okay, they're going to be ahead of Illinois, probably. They're going to be ahead of Ohio State, and there's not much conversation. If Ohio State wins, like, okay, then we can, they really need to put some thought into how they actually want to determine the Big Ten regular season champion.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how they try to make up some of these games for Michigan, or whether they even try, and how many they can get done. And Chris Holtmann was asked again, every time we talk to him each week, it's like, hey, what are you going to do about the regular season championship? And he's like, well, I could make a call right now and ask, but it's not even a concern. And he didn't have to say it, but it's like, wait until you see what you do against Michigan first. And then you can start to explore, hey, we just beat Michigan. Shouldn't we, yeah, they may have a better winning percentage, but look what we did. Now it's a conversation. It's not a conversation if you go and lose to Michigan. And, in fact, you'd look pretty foolish if you did that before this game and then end up losing. So while he has talked before about, eventually there's going to be discussions, he's not yet come out and we should be this and we should be that, because you've got 5 games left, and being the Big Ten, any of the 5 you could lose, all of the 5 you could lose. And so it makes no sense talking about it right now. And so that's why he hasn't, but it will need to be addressed. So that is 2 big games for the Buckeyes over the next few days. I'm sure everybody will be watching. So Tom, before we get to the Ohio State quarterbacks,
speaking of Michigan players not playing their sports.
Yeah, and normally I just remembered that since we're doing this, we talk about Michigan at the end. But this is news, so we can talk about it at the beginning and then address it maybe again at the end. Michigan quarterback Joe Milton, whom you might remember from such comparisons as Cam Newton, Tom Brady, and any other great quarterback you could think of. He is now in the transfer portal, which is I guess it's been expected. I think he was almost in the transfer portal before the season was over. When there was reports of some of the things he said, basically like, I'm transferring. And then he eventually has now decided to leave. And that leaves Michigan with, we'll talk about that later on down the road, maybe after. But it's not a surprise. It's another quarterback that transfers from Michigan, having started, joining the likes of Brandon Peters and Wilton Spate. And it's not a great sign for the quarterback whisperer, Jim Harbaugh.
Well, yeah, there was a stat that I saw on Twitter earlier today that no Harbaugh recruited quarterback has ever made it to their 4th season at Michigan. Like, never made it to their 4th season at Michigan. Because there are 6 scholarship quarterbacks who have transferred: Shane Morris, Alex Malzone, Wilton Spate, Brandon Peters, Dylan McCaffrey, Joe Milton. Not all of those guys. Obviously, Shane Morris, that was a Brady Hoke thing. But those are that's a lot of guys. And you can go through Ohio State's quarterback room and come up with a bunch of guys who've transferred as well. It's like, okay. But then there are the guys who have stayed and, interestingly enough, become champions. Wow. As the prophecy foretold. But, and when their guys are leaving before 4 years, like, Justin Fields didn't play 4 years at Ohio State. Like, well, yes, because he's left and he's going to go be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Like, that's a different reason than got beat out by Cade McNamara and is going to go transfer somewhere else. 3 months after we were all told that, he beat out Luke McCaffrey or Dylan McCaffrey. Which McCaffrey was it? Dylan McCaffrey. I can't remember. The traveling McCaffreys, the transferring McCaffreys. This is a guy who last fall we were told, well, if Dylan McCaffrey's transferring, obviously that means Joe Milton has seized the job and is poised for greatness and is about to, and then the season starts and it's like, oh no. Okay, no. This is exactly like every other Michigan quarterback season we've ever seen. I mean, like, who was the last Michigan quarterback to have like a really good career all the way through? I mean, after Denard Robinson, Devin Gardner. I mean, Devin Gardner. There were times they wanted Gardner out of there. Yeah. I mean, he had a good career. He didn't have a great career. He didn't probably have a career that lived up to his, because he was 5-star or very close to it, right? I mean, he didn't really live up to it. So Denard Robinson is probably the last Michigan quarterback to kind of live up to the hype. And it wasn't like, before that, I mean, you had a little bit of a
Henne?
dead period and you had Chad Henne. And I mean, Chad Henne, who helped win the AFC championship this year. So
Too soon, Tom, too soon.
yeah, I mean, it's not great. And, and good news, another savior is walking through that door just now. So JJ McCarthy is there. So I'm sure everything will be fine now.
The interesting thing is, like, Cade McNamara starts last year, and he essentially he sped his way through up and comer to the future, the starter, and then he plays poorly. And now he's no longer like you get anointed every time you're the starter at Michigan, or you're the starter is playing poorly, and wait till you see, because it used to be Brandon Peters, it has been John O'Corn. I mean, the backup is just wait to see, this guy's coming up, and eventually he'll take over because the starter just isn't as good.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Cade McNamara comes in, plays really well, I think twice, and then starts to decline again. And so you got to see his entire Michigan career in the span of about 4 weeks, which is a new record. Mm-hmm. Although Joe Milton was 2 weeks. That's actually the record. It was Minnesota, it was up, mm-hmm. and then it was down.
Last year was at least exciting because due to the late start, there was no September Heisman. So therefore it was at least a kind of fun, different thing to watch the hype cycle at least shifted a little bit. But yeah, I think I would, just as I'm thinking through, I'm like, I bet you could pick certain pro Michigan accounts on Twitter and go through their tweet histories and find quite a web of quarterback hype tweets that all didn't quite pan out. That would be probably maybe that'll be a fun off-season project just to keep an eye on that, because it's just salvation is always just about to walk through that door, and it's like, and somehow it just never happens. And here's the other thing: even if JJ McCarthy is the one and he does walk on Gatorade across the facility, that doesn't solve the defensive tackle problem. That doesn't solve the cornerback problem. Like there are other issues on that team that are not necessarily going to be solved, even if everything does fall into place at quarterback. And I'm not sure true freshman quarterback is, where I'd be putting all my eggs this year for Michigan in a year that is probably a little bit make or break for Harbaugh.
Yeah, and I just did a Twitter search of Milton and NFL throw, and unfortunately I only found 2. And one was that's an NFL throw from Milton, and the other one is that was an NFL throw from Milton.
That's good. Those are some good tweets.
But I am looking forward to the McCarthy McNamara thing. With McNamara, this is what McNamara's 3rd year coming in, and at this point, if it's if you're even, you're leaving type of thing with McCarthy, like if he's even or maybe slightly behind, do you go with McCarthy? Is it like the Chad Henne thing in 2004? I don't even remember all of the guys, but he was one of 3 or 4 guys in there.
Yeah. That was
Clayton Richard, maybe.
Clayton Richard was there. Yeah.
Gutierrez, Matt Gutierrez, maybe. I don't even remember. Because Matt Gutierrez was a freshman in 2001. So he would have been like a senior in 2004.
Are you thinking of Jermaine Gonzalez, who was the quarterback
Maybe,
that had the snap go over his head in 2001?
Yes. And Matt Gutierrez was later on. I don't know.
But I mean, that's an interesting question, and we're going to have a similar conversation about Ohio State later in the show. But you almost have to start McNamara, because if you start McCarthy right off the bat this year, I mean, unless he is like clearly far and away by far the best, you probably have to start McNamara, because if McCarthy leaves, unless you bring someone else in the transfer portal, then you have true freshman JJ McCarthy and Dan Villari, who is the 2-star that they got, who was kind of a last minute. We've talked about him before. He was like a last minute replacement after their 4-star commitment for 2020, I think. Had a heart condition and had to medically retire. So it was kind of an emergency backup break glass in case of emergency situation. And, boy, if you've got JJ McCarthy and then Dan Villari and then, someone you've brought in from the portal, like that is a very bad situation. And, again, this is the way Jim Harbaugh's contract was restructured. It was basically like, well, unless you beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten, like you're taking a massive pay cut, and it is set up in such a way that suggests like you probably need to beat Ohio State or you're going to be looking for a job next year. And this is the year they get Ohio State at home. So you'd better do it, because I don't think that whoever is Ohio State's quarterback is going to get less good in a year. So, winning in Columbus has not been real. The last time Michigan won in Columbus, I was a college student. So that'll give you an indication how long ago that was. So yeah, this is about as must win as games get for Michigan. And so they have to play the guy who gives them the best chance. But man, I think you have to start the year with McNamara starting, because otherwise you are really begging for one scholarship one scholarship quarterback that you feel at all comfortable with, and it's a true freshman. And if he gets hurt, like, oh boy, Katie bar the door.
Yeah, I think you go with but McCarthy's already enrolled, so they'll battle it out in the spring, they'll battle it out in the fall, and I wouldn't expect any kind of announcement. I was on around the Oval with Alex Gleitman dropping today, and he said the same thing, like, if you're going to beat Ohio State, this is the year. But then he's like, feels like we've said that for, I don't know, like the last 5 years for Michigan. Like each year there's been something, if you're going to do it, this would be the year, because next year it's not going to be a good time. And if they're going to do it, this would be the year you get them at home, new starters at quarterback, all of these different reasons. But again, that's the schedule. They start slowly. We know it's a program that could just completely tank based on all of the evidence we've seen over the years. We'll see how these new assistant coaches keep that from happening. Whether can they bail the water that is getting into the boat as quickly as the water gets in there. We'll see. So that's Michigan, Tom. Let's talk about the Ohio State quarterback situation, which, and I think I've said this on the show before, I think for the first time since 1971, no returning passing stats on the team, which seems like a long time, 50 years. So that is something that's pretty interesting, right?
And if you don't remember the 1971 season, how did it go? Not great, Bob. Not real right? Fantastic. Yes, that went from a stretch from 1968 national championship. 1969 would have won the national championship, except they lost to Michigan. And 1970 would have won the national championship, except they lost to Stanford in the Rose Bowl. So that was 3 years in a row where it was like, that was as dominating a stretch as Ohio State had basically in its history up until probably Urban Meyer walked through the door. And then they went, I think, 7-4. And that was the year that they lost to, the only year they've lost to Northwestern since, 2004 and 1971 are the last two times. So anytime you're losing to Northwestern at Ohio State, that's generally a pretty good indication. Like, yes, this is a bad year. Bad things are happening. So yeah, that was, I think the overall talent level is probably better on this year's team than it was on the 1971 team. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. But when you're starting from scratch at quarterback, that's, they have better passing options now than they did in 1971 for sure. But that's always kind of a big question mark you got to get resolved before the season, because otherwise you get a season that looks like a Michigan season.
Well, let's talk about this. Ohio State has 3 scholarship quarterbacks, a 5-star, 5-star, and a 4-star. What did Woody Hayes have back then? How many stars did he have? Of his probably like 8 scholarship quarterbacks / centers / fullbacks, were they all 4 stars? Were they 3 stars? Were they 5 stars, Tom? Did they have 6 stars back then?
Yeah, they had, it was just, here's a bunch of white guys from like somewhere in the Massillon, Canton, Youngstown triangle probably, and maybe one farm boy from somewhere down outside Dayton. And it was the no scholarship limits probably definitely helped with the depth back then. But I'm not remembering who was before Corny Green. I think there might have been like 1 year between Rex Kern and Cornelius Green where it was like, oh, that's not good. We should get another quarterback and maybe a running back from, say, Eastmore High School, and then things will turn around.
And they did. So Ohio State will have 3 quarterbacks right now in winter and then in spring. CJ Stroud played 3 games, 8 snaps last year, had a 48-yard rush touchdown that we all remember. Distance himself from the defense. Jack Miller, the true freshman last year, 2 games, 10 snaps, had a 21 yard carry down to the 1 or the 2, and then finished it off with a touchdown run. So he rushed for 23 yards on 2 carries last year. Neither of those two threw a pass. As we mentioned, Kyle McCord now, the 5-star freshman from Philadelphia, enters. And the last time on Ohio State true freshman quarterback started, you had Braxton Miller in 2011. Before then, it was Terrell Pryor, 2008. They had more competition. Braxton didn't even start. Neither of them started the season as the starter. They both had to, Braxton had to play so well that he was better than Joe Bauserman. And Todd Beckman eventually played so poorly that they're like, let's just go with Terrell Pryor. And there's no stopping it now. Those two situations are completely different than this one, because I think there's more talent, more total talent than either of those two situations. And so players are going to have to play well, and I think they'll make each other better. I don't know how much better like Todd Beckman made Terrell Pryor. I don't know how much better Joe Bauserman made Braxton Miller. I think the iron will sharpen the iron more here with these three, don't you think?
Would you say that Joe Bauserman or Nick Siciliano had a better impact on Braxton Miller during the 2011 season?
Yeah, that's I don't know.
Hey, that's weird. That was the year where they won a game where he just completed one pass all game. Huh, that's weird. That's with all those good influences around. Weird. I don't. Well, I mean, you had Jim Bowman calling plays, so I mean, it was really the whole package is really coming together there for him. So
yeah, man, what a year. That's still too soon.
One of my absolute favorites is the Illinois game there, which is just the absolute perfect encapsulation of Ohio State playing at Illinois. It's like, yeah, they're going to win, but man, is it going to be stupid. Like, man, is it going to be stupid and terrible to watch. Can't wait.
Yeah, you won't need to keep this one on the DVR for long. So one of the interesting things we've been hearing about Kyle McCord on the Ask the Insiders board is the way he's leading the freshman group. And in the winter workouts, things are kind of split up right now between the vets and the freshmen. And I think probably even split up more than that just with the COVID protocols. But he's emerging as a leader. But he was also a leader during the recruiting period, like putting this class together. He was a very big part of it, especially since there are no visits and for forever. And so he was a big part of keeping guys together, getting guys together, and Jack Sawyer on the defensive side as well. And so you've got this natural leadership where guys gravitate towards him. Does he have an advantage in that over, say, CJ Stroud and Jack Miller? CJ Stroud didn't put a class together. He was one of the last, one of the later guys. Jack Miller did help put a class together, but then they went out and got another quarterback on top of him. And so I wonder, of the three, is Kyle McCord maybe setting up to be a leader? But then you watch CJ Stroud, he was attached to Justin Fields' hip last year. And I still remember the way CJ Stroud, when he scored that touchdown, the sideline was going crazy. And so, how we've talked in the past about you only get to see so much, and so you have to make a lot, or you have to take a lot out of what you see and try to extrapolate. That's one of the things I've tried to do with CJ Stroud. And you see the way the players were excited for him. To me, that tells me that they like him, they can follow him. And so maybe, am I reading too much into that, Tom, or is that just what we're supposed to do? We're forced to do that.
We're kind of forced to do that. I mean, and that maybe you can read whatever you want into that. You can read the CJ Stroud thing into that. You can read the Ryan Day talking all season about the importance of them bringing their own energy, and the fact that that's what the Ohio State sideline looked like at the end of a game that they won 50-10, right? Something like that. Versus, let's go back to Michigan. There were Michigan games where there was, a long pass completion or an interception or something, and the sideline's just standing there like it was just, a 2-yard run on 2nd and 5, that, no reaction at all. So you can read whatever you want into that particular bit. But the thing that I read a lot into is the first game. Okay, Jack Miller came in first. He was, he came in against Nebraska. He was the guy. So, okay, there's one data point. We had heard kind of during fall camp that probably CJ Stroud was the guy who was going to be the number 2. So, okay, Jack Miller comes in the first game. All right. And then pretty much the rest of the year, we watched CJ Stroud take those reps right behind Justin Fields. So, I mean, that tells me that, this was not just like handed to him. He either won it or, had it won early and they were just trying to keep both guys involved. But, he seemed like he had a pretty good leg up throughout the year, and he had a little bit better recruiting rankings. Just the buzz we were hearing from inside the program was kind of that Stroud was kind of ahead of Miller. And, a lot can change. Let's see spring ball. Let's see how things look in spring. Let's see how Kyle McCord looks on the field. I mean, we have some questions coming up, and some of them are like, so who looks most athletic? And it's like, I'll let you know when I see it in person, because I have seen, I have seen two of them doing things in the open field once. And so from those two things, CJ Stroud ran twice as far as Jack Miller on that play. Now, that may have had to do with where the ball was on the field. However, maybe that also means he's twice as athletic. I don't know.
Wow, that's the statement.
I guess, I mean, it's math. I mean, it's
true.
40-something yards versus 20-something yards. I mean, it's just, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of shrug emoji going on here. I have my sense for where things maybe stack up right now, but I don't know how much of that is based on actual reality and how much of that is based on, tea leaf reading and, looking at how the sideline reacts to touchdowns scored by other people.
I think the show is on the record as having CJ Stroud the starter. If you're going to project somebody, I think we have him based on the fact that he was the backup. So you move everybody up one, and no, nothing is settled yet. But I think that's the pecking order right now. Is Stroud, Miller, McCord, and then you'll see if anybody can move up. I'm sitting here wondering though, Tom, if you could, if you're picking an all Big Ten quarterback, are you taking anybody you don't have to think hard to take CJ Stroud as the all Big Ten quarterback, because Ohio State, I could have looked it up earlier, but they've won so many over the past few years that it's almost like, well, the starter is going to have a 50-50 chance. The Ohio State starter is going to have like a 70-30 chance to be the all Big Ten quarterback. And if CJ Stroud is that guy, if he's the Ohio State starter, then pretty good chance he's going to be the all Big Ten quarterback as a first-year starter, or anybody who wins the job. And so I will ask you, Tom, who are you taking? If I'm asking for who is the Big Ten, all Big Ten quarterback, even the Big Ten quarterback of the year for 2021, are you who are you taking? Because I'm looking at the list here. You got Michael Penix, he'll be back, but is he going to be healthy right at the outset? Talia Tagovailoa, Sean Cliff.
Almost fit it through there. Yep. Sorry. Keep going.
Tanner Morgan, no. Spencer Petras at Iowa, maybe. Rocky Lombardi is gone, so that would have been my pick. Who is Northwestern getting right now? Did they get another transfer? Is that correct?
Maybe.
Yeah, Graham Mertz at Wisconsin. Adrian Martinez.
Yeah, Graham Mertz isn't a bad pick. Yeah. I mean, he's not going to put up crazy stats, but I think he's going to be real good. And that's a team that's going to win a lot. And you do at some point kind of get like Ohio State fatigue, because the stat is, I just looked it up. They have won the quarterback of the year 5 straight seasons and 8 of the last 9. So Braxton Miller in 2012, 2013, JT Barrett in 14, 15, and 17. They did not win it in 16 because you watched the 2016 Ohio State season. You know why no one won it that season. And then Dwayne Haskins in 2018 and Fields in 19 and 20. So, yeah, I mean, it is it's kind of like Ohio State versus the field. And I guess I'm going to take the field here because, none of those guys were true freshmen. Barrett was a redshirt freshman in 14, but I feel like they're going to be looking to give it to someone who is not an Ohio State quarterback. So unless, CJ Stroud or whoever lights it up, lights it up this year. And even then it's like, okay, is this like an Oklahoma quarterback thing where maybe it's just a system thing? And the talent around them is so good that, that makes them look better. I think I'm going to take the field. And if you're making me pick a specific person, I think I'll go with Graham Mertz, even though he's not going to put up like crazy numbers.
Tom, are you secretly working with Pro Football Focus, choosing a Wisconsin quarterback over an Ohio State quarterback who's producing more statistically?
I can't say it is.
I knew it.
No one watches more pro football than me, so.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I also asked for a bunch of listener questions because I feel like we've talked about the quarterback situation quite a bit between the two of us, and I don't know if there's much more for us to add conversationally other than to have, hey, what are other people thinking about? Because that's just easier. Just easier than coming up with our own questions and topics.
And people, we had some questions in here that were like, oh, that's kind of an interesting question. I wouldn't have necessarily thought to go through. So, the first one is from @Brock774-11489. How do you think they'll separate and feature the quarterbacks in the spring game?
By height.
All right, next question.
Yeah. Well, because we've seen them, they'll because we're talking 3 quarterbacks, and usually it's like 4, but then they'll just switch jerseys, and so that's what I would expect. You try to get as much out of, but then you don't want to keep guys in there too long because you don't want them to get hurt. But who else are you going to put out there? JP Andrade and everybody else. All of the other walk-ons will maybe get a snap here and there, but you still want to see as much as you can. And Ryan Day has said he wants game day situations as much as possible. Well, that's what the spring game is. It's a game day situation, game-like situation. So I think maybe this year, does the spring game have even more value than it normally does?
I would say it almost certainly does, because they're dealing with a bunch of guys who have functionally zero experience on field in kind of real situations right now. So that is as real a situation as you're going to see for Kyle McCord between the time he enrolls and the time the ball gets kicked off against Minnesota. And, they've got some snaps for Jack Miller and they've got some snaps for CJ Stroud, but not many. And they're really garbage time snaps. They were, Stroud played 1 snap after Fields got drilled in the ribs against Clemson. And okay, there's one. And he had a clearly designed handoff and not a read, because he would have walked into the end zone if he had kept it on that one. But he, handed it off and ta-da, that's it. So, yeah, this is a huge spring game for them. And I would anticipate you're going to see more of them, because, you got to remember, these guys are all going to be in black jerseys. So this is not, your injury risk is significantly decreased. Ohio State fans are probably still traumatized by the Mike Tomczak injury a million years ago. But, with the black jersey, unless there's a no contact injury or someone falls into someone, you're relatively protected. So, and I'm sure they'll tell the officials to blow it dead anytime anyone's even close. So I think you're going to see, I'm going to be real interested to see, who are the starting quarterbacks for the 2 teams, and my expectation is you're probably going to see the 2 returning guys be the starters, because if one of the returning guys is not one of the starters, then that's going to be a pretty clear, why don't you leave right now?
We will read into that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling whoever it is would also read into that. So there's that. And they're incentivized to keep these guys around and keep this an open competition. And as long as it is a reasonably close competition, you want to keep these guys around, because they're early enough in their careers. They're going to develop at different rates, at different speeds. And you need the depth. You need these guys here. You need the bodies here. So, it'll be very interesting to see. But I think you're going to see. Just going back to 2017, I feel like it was like Dwayne Haskins was on one team, Joe Burrow was on the other team, and then Tate Martell just switched back and forth between the 2 teams, and he took snaps for both, and Burrow might have taken snaps for both as well. So I think you're gonna see a lot of mixing and matching, and we always do the who's going to take the who's going to be the who's the first pick of the quarterbacks, who's gonna take the first snap, and you can read crazy amounts of stuff into that if you want to, but I have a feeling they're going to do their best to kind of split those reps as evenly as possible between the 3.
Didn't one of us write Dwayne Haskins starts the spring game at the spring game because you weren't sure but yeah, because Joe Burrow he definitely switched teams, because I remember having to add.
Yeah, he went to LSU. Everyone knows that. Yeah.
I guess I should have been the precursor. That dude transferred in a spring game, like from one team to the other. What a turncoat. I never liked that guy. So yeah, I think we'll see
whatever
the same
happened to
thing.
him.
Nothing special. Probably lives near a river now.
Down by the river. Playing in a stadium down by the river. Next one from @Chilean Stud 11. That was my old handle. With the QBs showcasing their abilities as runners, should OSU adopt the triple option offense? I'll hang up and listen.
This is your puppy. This is your baby. This is the one you say, if you want to win and you want to be different, you should go to the triple option.
If Ryan Day wants to win at Illinois, he should adopt the triple option. That has been my position for years now. Yes.
But not Ohio State?
Ohio State may have enough talent that they don't have to run it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's a small talent advantage between Ohio State and Illinois, and Ohio State may be able to win just based on sheer talent advantage alone, rather than having to resort to a somewhat gimmicky offense.
But Tom, the spread offense is a gimmicky offense designed to equate talent and play against better talent than what you are. So if Ohio State has had to rely on this gimmick of a spread offense, why can't they also rely on another gimmick of the triple option?
I stand corrected. They should go to the triple option.
Thank you.
Next one from @Jiggy4U. Predict the pecking order of quarterbacks at the end of spring ball. Basically, does McCord do enough as an early enrollee to put himself in real contention for the starting job heading into camp?
I don't think he does, because it would be foolish for Ryan Day to put him in there. I keep saying I think it's going to be 40-40-20 in terms of the reps, with 40-40 being Stroud and Miller, and then 20 for McCord, just from the way that Ryan Day has talked about those two specifically. And now he has said Kyle McCord is definitely going to have a chance to start. He's going to come in and compete for the job. That is legit. But I think maybe he needs to earn the he'll be given a 20. He needs to earn more than that. That's just my math. Not that Ryan Day would probably ever confirm that.
Yeah, I think by the end of spring you may see something close-ish to a third. Once, there's probably not a whole ton of point to giving Kyle McCord first team reps with at the beginning of spring ball, when he's still trying to figure out which end of the pointy football to throw downfield. Like there's going to be a real learning curve there. By the time you get to the end of the spring game, I think you will probably see pretty close to even reps, as you kind of like, okay, let's see where this stands right now, because they do kind of have to figure it out. Now, I don't think it's in their best interest to, even if someone feels like even if they feel like, aha, we know who the guy is going to be, I don't think it's in their best interest to give someone 80% of the first team reps, because the other two guys are going to recognize that, and at least one of them is probably going to go bye. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep this a reasonable competition. And again, like I said, that's not just manipulating them. That's also like, yeah, things can change. Like these guys have only been here a year. They're probably going to more than double the number of reps they've gotten, especially first team reps, just during these spring practices alone. So yeah, there is a lot of learning curve still ahead of these guys. And, there is no part of them that is incentivized to make a decision early. Like it is in everyone's, from the program's perspective, it's in everyone's best interest to keep this going into fall camp, keep it an open competition, see if someone has developed more over the summer, see if someone has, especially if it's, Kyle McCord. Like I don't expect Kyle McCord to come out of spring ball as the number one guy. It would not surprise me at all if Kyle McCord was the number one guy coming out of fall camp. That's a possibility. It's just, that would be asking a lot for a true freshman coming in for spring ball to just immediately vault to the top of the depth chart.
Well, remember how shocked we were when Michael Jordan did that at guard, which shouldn't happen. So I've been on, I said this on two different shows this week, Tom. Do you remember when Justin Fields was named the starter in 2019?
Was it, let's see, he was named, it was him against Chugs and Gunnar Hoke, and Matthew Baldwin was gone at that point, right?
Right.
Was Matthew? Yeah. So was it? Who were the four quarterbacks there? Fields,
Chugs, and Hoke. That was basically it. And then was Baldwin still there? He may have still been there.
I think they had a fourth scholarship quarterback that year, I think. So I think it may have been It may have been Baldwin, but I'm going to say it was, well, officially named, or
Yes.
because I was going to say, I remember watching him take a whole mess of first team reps in spring ball that year. So
officially,
I think we named him the starter about March 1st. When the team named him a starter is probably about April or August 15th.
It was right around there. It was like 2 weeks before the season.
Yeah. 2 weeks before the season is about right. And,
and that was with no questions that it was going to be Justin Fields.
Right.
And he still waited that long.
Yeah. And this is going to be much less of a clear-cut competition. Like if this is as clear-cut a competition as that was, like, holy pants, this is going to be a special season for Ohio State, because that means someone has really really ready to light it up. I don't think that's a realistic expectation for a redshirt freshman, but then again, that was basically what Justin Fields was. So maybe.
If I put the over under on different starting quarterbacks with not having anything to do with injury, just performance at 1.5. You taking the over or the under?
Under. If we're leaving injury out of it, I will say under.
That's where I am.
Yeah,
I think whoever wins it is going to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good enough, and you're probably going to see more rotation of guys this year, because I think you're going to, they will not have probably. I think they were anticipating doing more rotation last year, and just the situations didn't lend themselves to that. I'm sure that they were planning on playing a whole bunch of Jack Miller and or CJ Stroud in the second half of the Rutgers game. And then Rutgers kept, running the annexation of Puerto Rico and, kept it like just close enough that they could, they were playing Justin Fields way into the fourth quarter. Justin Fields might have played that whole game, actually. And, there were a few other games that were like that, where it was like, Ohio State's up 35-7 on Indiana in the third quarter. And it's like, oh, okay, good. We'll get to see a quarter of Jack Miller or CJ Stroud. And then all of a sudden, Indiana's got the ball with a chance to tie the game at the end. He was like, what happened? So yeah, I think, assuming you do have some more lopsided games, and there are some non-conference games that should lend themselves to multiple quarterback kind of games. You're gonna see a bunch of guys getting reps, but yeah, barring injury, I will say one starter this year.
CJ Stroud did get one snap in that Rutgers game, so
I take it all back.
Thank you.
Next question from at JAS Noop. How big an advantage does Stroud and Miller have over McCord for being in the system, throwing to current wide receivers in practice, and being in the strength program for a year despite not throwing in a game?
But
I think that's a pretty significant advantage. And a lot of that is more not even necessarily throwing to the wide receivers. It's more being in that strength program, being in the film room, knowing the playbook. I mean, how many times have we talked to a quarterback where, we talk to the freshmen and they're like, oh, it's really coming into play now. Everything's kind of falling into place now. I'm really starting to understand it. And then you talk to them the following spring, and you're like, I didn't know a darn thing. I thought I knew it, and I didn't know a darn thing. But now I know it. And and it's generally not like the third year they say the same thing again. It's like it takes a year for a quarterback to kind of figure it out, learn the playbook, learn the system, figure out all the accoutrement that goes with being a quarterback. And for Ryan Day, I think that's where you've got a pretty big advantage. And, Kyle McCord, I think you've got you look at his highlights from high school. It's like, yep, I can see it. Like, it's not one of those like, why is this guy a 5-star? It's like, okay, yep, that guy looks like a 5-star. Okay. But that's a lot to ask for someone to, be going up against other really talented quarterbacks. Again, this is not Braxton Miller coming in and having to beat out Joe Bauserman for the job. This is, you're going in against a couple guys who are also very, very, very good quarterbacks and have a 1-year head start on you. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge for McCord. That doesn't mean he can't win the job. It just, when I say I don't expect him to come out of spring ball as the clear-cut starter, that's why.
And Ryan Day said there's no substitute for playing in the actual games. And we'll see how that, when Kyle McCord can do that, what kind of boost that gives him. But with Stroud and Miller, and remember, Justin Fields was so banged up towards the end of last year that he wasn't getting a ton of practice. And so those reps were going to CJ Stroud and Jack Miller. And then most of last year was just spent practicing. And that's a lot of Stroud and Miller reps. And so they have a ton of those reps. And so I think that gives them a huge advantage until maybe you start, because Kyle McCord, I don't know that he can catch up just doing practice. That's where it's I just think it's going to be tough. And he would have to be so much better that you just continue to climb. And I'm not saying it can't happen because, like you said, you look at his highlights and he's mobile enough. He can throw from all kinds of different angles. He can throw on the run, throw running to his left. He's fine in the pocket, of course. It's a tough ask. And the good news is that he's here and he's working towards it. And he's going to get a shot. And so that's one of the obviously one of the benefits of coming in, but also competing against two guys who haven't thrown the ball yet. Yes, they've been in practice and all of that, but they have as many passes in college as you do. So I think even mentally, that gives him, I would say, an edge. It just keeps him from being like, oh, there's no way I could do this. I can't catch these guys. Look how many passes they had. Like they don't have any. So when you're looking at they've got pretty much the same stats I do, then it doesn't seem so daunting.
Yeah, and if he had not come in for spring, then he's really not in the conversation. Like that, you minimally have to have that spring because, like Justin Fields, when he came in, I think we spent all of the spring and summer of 2019 trying to temper expectations for Justin Fields. And he did play college football last year, but it was just a little bit, and it's a different system. He's got to learn the playbook. He's got to, he's going to have games where he's completing 50% of his passes. That's okay. That's all right. It's going to be, and then he just comes in and lights the world on fire. Now, Justin Fields is probably a generational talent. I don't know that just on pure athletic ability and talent, any of these guys are Justin Fields, because I don't know how many quarterbacks are Justin Fields. The Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields high school class in terms of top two quarterbacks is like, that's got to be right up there for quite a while. So yeah, I don't know if they'll, I don't know if that's a reasonable standard to hold people to, but it's possible that one of these guys is somewhere close to that good. And that's when you do get into no matter how much Ohio State quarterback fatigue is, like in 2019, it was like, you could want to give the Big Ten quarterback of the year to anyone, if anyone else in the world, but anyone who watched that year went, okay, yep, Justin Fields, best big quarterback in the Big Ten by a huge margin. And it is not out of the realm of possibility. That's about a 95th percentile outcome probably for, whoever wins that starting job, that they're anywhere close to that good. But that's, we have seen Ryan Day do it a bunch of times since he's gotten to Ohio State. So you never say never. Next one, with the lack of game reps these QBs have, are the coaches doing anything extra to get them prepped? That's from @BuckeyeAM.
Well, and that's what we touched on it a little bit earlier, where Ryan Day said he's going to have to figure out how to create game-like situations for these guys during the spring. And maybe when we get to talk to Ryan Day again, we can ask him exactly what are you doing to do that. And so that's what it's going to be. They'll all be throwing on their own as well. We know that, but it's about the game-like situations. And so that's what they're going to be doing in order to try to manufacture that. And it won't be the same. They know that. Maybe, Tom, they should just take all of the practices, move them to the shoe, practice at night, crank up the crowd noise, put more cardboard people in the seats, get a Buckeye guy there.
Well, you had me right until the end. Yeah, no, I think they're going to do as much as they possibly can. And that'll just be as many game reps as they can possibly put them in, and as many, they everything they do is a competitive situation. So the whole practice is already structured around putting these guys in competitive situations every single rep they take. So, the more you can do that and the more you can make it more game-like, the better. So that's going to be the focus all spring, all summer, all fall. And at this point, I think I have a decent amount of faith that Ryan Day's quarterback development ability is going to probably end up with at least one of these extremely highly touted quarterbacks being pretty okay this fall. That would kind of be my hot take there.
All right, so let's talk Ryan Day's quarterback time at Ohio State. 2017, JT Barrett, 2018 Dwayne Haskins, 2019 Justin Fields, 2020 Justin Fields. Are you expecting a 2017 JT Barrett, a 2020 Justin Fields, where it wasn't as good as 2019? But I think both of those are pretty darn good. Or Tom, are you going to go 2018 or 2019 Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, or are you expecting something completely different, like below the 2017 JT Barrett?
I think 2017 JT Barrett is the most realistic of those four. I mean, Dwayne Haskins in 2018 was just purely from the stat perspective, like those are not reasonable numbers to ever expect to see from an Ohio State quarterback again. And that was a function of like, yeah, the offensive line is not very good and they can't run the ball. And also the defense is really bad. So they just throw for 1 million yards every week. Numbers that good are actually not necessarily a great indication for the team overall. So I don't expect that kind of numbers. And, I mean, like I said, 2019 Justin Fields, it's within possibility that someone gets there, but that's also asking an awful lot. And 2017 JT Barrett, if you end up around there, and I haven't pulled up the stats, but
I got it if you want.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and read his stats off.
Yeah, 14 games, 3,053 yards passing, 64% completion percentage with 35 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. 218 yards passing a game. I think those are all very doable. I think they'll throw for more than 208. I think the starter will throw for more than 218 unless they are rotating quite a bit, trying to get the second guy in there more than just the last series or two of the game. But I think that's very, very doable. Like I could see that being like, yeah, that sounds like a solid prediction.
Yeah, that's probably a little better than the 50th percentile outcome. But I mean, that's, 64% and 218 yards a game and like basically a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception. Like that's at this point with the amount of talent they have on this team, like, I mean, this is going to be a good offensive line. This is going to be a remarkably deep group of wide receivers. Jeremy Ruckert's back and he's going to be very good at tight end. You've got a pretty good, deep stable of running backs that I think when we get to the running back show, we'll have some exciting things to say about some of the younger guys probably, but there's just so much about this team that the quarterback doesn't have to do it all. This is not, this is not Braxton Miller in 2011 where he just has to run around and do it all himself. Like this is a quarterback who's being put in a position to succeed in a system that is built to make him succeed. I mean, yeah, that 2017 JT Barrett season is probably, about like the median outcome for this year for the starting quarterback. If it's a 35-9 kind of season, touchdowns and interceptions, that's about right. Like, yeah, it's a first time starter, redshirt freshman. Like, yeah, he's going to make some mistakes. And you just kind of have to accept that those numbers will get better as things go on. But yeah, if the next 3 years of whoever it is, CJ Stroud or Kyle McCord or Jack Miller is basically 2017 JT Barrett and then 2020 Justin Fields and then 2019 Justin Fields. I mean, that's, I think that's a reasonable trend to expect. And just, so people don't think Justin Fields regressed last year. Like, yeah, there were some extenuating circumstances. Like we all need to be shown a little grace for all of 2020. So that's that was not a typical Michigan quarterback regression situation. That was yes, we all remember last year.
It is interesting to me that we're like, yeah, I think the new guy could, do 35-9 and have a JT Barrett like season, which was like a top 5 Ohio State quarterback season of all time. Like, yeah, I mean, if you want to put a low bar there,
it was a top 5 Ohio State quarterback season of all time in 2017, and now it's a top 5 quarterback season in the last like 5 years or so. Like, yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think Ryan Day might be pretty good. Is I think my big takeaway in terms of quarterback
that's
development.
The gist.
Yes. Speaking of hot takes, this one from @UM Hot Takes. In your opinion, do any of the current quarterbacks on the roster have potential to become a solid NFL starter? If so, which ones?
I think at this point in Brian Day's recruiting and evaluation and development, if you are a scholarship quarterback on Ohio State's roster, you should have the potential to become a solid NFL starter. I think that's where it is now, unless sometimes, you just go you find a gamer like Todd Reesing. It's like, well, nobody could beat him out. We had no choice but to play him because he was so dang good. JT Barrett, for instance, where no matter who you try, although some would say nobody, they didn't try to beat him out with anybody.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
But I think at this point, if you are a scholarship quarterback and Ryan Day has recruited you, you have to assume that that person has the potential to become a solid NFL starter. Dwayne Haskins had that potential. We'll see how that turns out. It's not looking so great right now, but the key word there is potential. And I think, I think maybe you look at Jack Miller and you wonder about the shoulders, the shoulder, and because there's been some injury history in high school, and so does that hold him back? But I'm not going to say nobody on this roster, no scholarship quarterback doesn't have the potential.
Yeah, I mean, you've got two guys who are 5-star recruits and a guy who is a high 4-star recruit. So history would indicate, yes, they all have the potential to be a solid NFL quarterback. And, as you said, like Ryan Day's, I'm not going to give Ryan Day credit for Joe Burrow, but, Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields, I mean, yeah, that's that is a 5-star and a high 4-star. And yep, they both got, one got drafted in the middle of the first round. And, Ryan Day is not responsible for Dwayne Haskins' decisions post Ohio State. So I'm not sure I'm going to lay any of that on Ryan Day, but, and then, Justin Fields is going to be another top 10 quarterback. And like, yeah, he was the number 2 quarterback prospect in the country. So yes, he should turn into a top 10-ish NFL draft pick, but it doesn't always work that way. See Patterson, Shea for one example. Like it's like, yeah, well, what do you expect? It's the number 1 quarterback in the class. It's like, yes, but how often does that not work out? Like, and it keeps working out for Ohio State quarterbacks. And it's like Lincoln Riley quarterbacks at this point. Like, sure, like whoever's going to be after Spencer Rattler, I'm going to put money on whoever that is, probably being a first-round draft pick and being a Heisman finalist. Same thing for Ryan Day quarterbacks like Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, both Heisman finalists and first-round draft picks. And whoever wins the job this fall, I'd probably put money on them getting to New York at some point and then getting to go shake Roger Goodell's hand at some point.
Ooh,
I mean, assuming we're still doing that at that point. I hope by the time that CJ Stroud or Jack Miller or Kyle McCord is getting drafted, I sure hope we're back to, unless it's not Roger Goodell, that would be fine too.
I hope that you finally get back to the point where the hugging and there's just such closeness, like the longing.
Man,
I'm sorry.
The yearning, the angry Jets fans, like, man, he's so great.
Booing right. Jets picks, yes.
Next one for Olave for Heisman. Predict the quarterback depth chart for fall, and along the same lines, it almost seems like McCord has surpassed Jack Miller in fan perception already. So are we basically down to a 2-horse race?
Well, I'll address the second part first here, Tom, because I know you are you're always telling me like fans are stupid and their opinions are dumb.
That's just the people who listen to the podcast, not everyone. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about every fan. Kidding. We love them all.
Yes. It does have that feeling, but I don't think Kyle McCord at this point has not surpassed Jack Miller in the actual race. I don't think it is a 2-horse race. It may be a 2-horse race in the fall because if you ask me to predict the QB depth chart in the fall, I'll say CJ Stroud and then Jack Miller or Kyle McCord, and it's going to be or Tom, or is dangerous for Jack Miller.
Is it dangerous?
Would it dissuade him? Would it discourage him?
I think what's going to happen is there's going to just, rather than worrying about the depth chart, it's going to be like, who's taking the first team snaps? Because I'm sure that, the internal depth chart on August 10th or whatever is going to say CJ Stroud or Jack Miller or Kyle McCord. What is the breakup of reps during practice? Because if one of those guys is getting 60 or 70% of the first team reps, the other guys are not stupid. So they can tell like, some of these ors are maybe more or than others.
What if one guy is getting like 3% of the reps, but he's like, I'm an or. I don't care. What? Me worried? I'm an Orr.
Yeah.
They know I'm an Orr just based on my free throws.
You don't need to explain this to me. I've lived my whole life as one. So yes, no, I don't think they're going to announce a quarterback before mid-August at the very earliest. I mean, probably a week or two before the start of the season, because you do need to have a guy at that point, but they don't want to do it too early. And I think there's a decent possibility that, assuming no one transfers before the fall, you're going to see all three guys playing in the first couple games. I don't know if it's going to be first game at Minnesota, you're going to see all three guys. And then the second game is Oregon, which is, if they're playing three quarterbacks against Oregon, either something has gone tremendously well or tremendously poorly. So, but after that, you've got a Rutgers and a Tulsa and a Akron game. And yeah, I mean, you're probably going to see all three quarterbacks. Any scholarship quarterbacks on the roster are going to play against Akron would be my best bet. So, if I could see you being correct with a quarterback depth chart for fall being, or at least the running order being CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, or Kyle McCord. But I mean, the first time that this is the like the Sugar Bowl. Like I think it might have been CJ Stroud or Jack Miller on the depth chart all fall. And but when Justin Fields came out in the Sugar Bowl, there was no question who was going into the game. So like let's see who is the second person on the field in the Minnesota game. That'll be interesting to see.
I don't think we didn't even get a depth chart for the Alabama game, if I'm correct. And I'm wondering, do you think we'll even get a depth chart next season?
I believe in our friends in the sports information department. Even if you don't, I believe in our friends in the sports information
department. Don't be telling lies about me. That's my thing that I do about you. You mentioned that you have to have somebody, you have to let people know who the starter is so that they know. I would point you, I disagree. I would point you to the 2015 season where neither JT or Cardale Jones knew who was starting until the start of the Virginia Tech game when Urban said, get out there to Cardale. So that's proof right there that you don't need somebody to know they're the starter, because look how good that team was, especially at quarterback when there were no issues.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a masterclass in quarterback management and roster management and season management. I think earlier when I ran through the list of quarterback of the year winners, I was thinking the 2015 season was the year they didn't win it. That was 2016 they didn't win it. So who the heck won it in 2016?
Trace McSorley?
That could have been Trace McSorley. Yeah, that was not the year that I looked at and thought, that was the year. That was not a year that I looked at Ohio State and went, there is quarterback excellence happening in here in front of my eyes right now. Yeah, that was
McSorley.
Okay, there you go. Well,
unless it was Wilton Spate or Tommy Armstrong.
I'm pretty sure.
Mitch Leidner. That's my bad.
There you go. Former future first round pick, Mitch Leidner. Yes.
Aren't we all?
And the last one from Burleson Buckeye: is there a scenario in which all three stay on the team for the whole season? If McCord wins the job, is that the worst case scenario for quarterback depth?
What do you think?
He gestures to me. I don't want to answer this question. You answer this question. Yeah, I mean, there's a scenario that all three guys stay on the team for the whole season. If it is a reasonable competition and it is not like, on August 5th, everyone in the world knows that it's CJ Stroud and the other, there's not even a remote competition. There's a chance you see someone in the portal at that point. I don't think that's going to be the case. Once the season gets started, I'm not sure you're super incentivized to. I mean, there's only three quarterbacks on the roster, and this is a team that could win the national championship. And we have seen an Ohio State team get down to its third quarterback and have to win a national championship. Like, this is a thing that has happened. I don't know that you're incentivized to do the Dylan McCaffrey thing and bolt right before the season or in the middle of the season. Like, why? Why would you do that? Like, go ahead, and even if you're the second guy or the third guy, like, you are, you're one snap away from being the starter. So yeah, I don't think they're super incentivized. I think unless someone comes out of this spring, if someone is coming out of this spring like, oh, no, clearly I am way behind the other two guys and there's just no chance for me here, like maybe after the spring you see someone transfer. I don't see I don't see it making a whole lot of sense to have someone on like September 10th put their name in the portal. Like that doesn't mean it can't happen, but that doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
I just don't get that. Like Mookie Cooper transferring during the season, like you're playing for a national championship. You're heading towards something like that. Like, why would you, or like Brendan White leaving the team? Like, I don't get that during the season.
I mean, last year I think there's enough other stuff going on that like, if you're really not going to play and this is not your long-term home, do you really want to jump through all the hoops of the daily nasal swabs and not being able to see anyone and all that stuff? Brendan White leaving in the middle of the season was kind of like, that was weird. And Isaiah Pryor left in the middle of the season too, didn't he? Yeah. I mean, that was...
he really wanted to get away from Greg Schiano.
And Brendan White really wanted to get to Greg Schiano. It's the circle of life. Yeah, I mean, it's I just, you never say never with the transfer portal, because I mean, these are decisions that the rationale behind some of these decisions is not always the same rationale that you or I would necessarily have. But yeah, I think there's a decent possibility all three of them, if you get to August 20th and they're all still on the roster, I think there's a pretty decent chance all three of them stick around for the whole season, just because you have a legitimate chance to still be playing just because there's only three of them. So, and then the other half, I'll let you answer this one first. If McCord wins the job, is that the worst case scenario for quarterback depth?
That is, yes, it is the worst case scenario. And it may not mean anybody's going anywhere, but it does, it does have now two guys have been passed by a younger guy. And so that tells them where they stand and where they're likely to stand for the next at least 3 years. But
and that place is the sidelines.
Yes. But then if you've got a guy who is a true freshman and good enough to come in and win the job, that's great, but that's not the question. It's not, the question is that the worst case scenario for quarterback depth? Now, is that the best case scenario or worst case scenario for the team? It is the worst case scenario for quarterback depth, because if somebody were to leave, and I mean, they could be down to two quarterbacks regardless of who wins, the job. But that would certainly be an escalator to getting there, and an accelerator. So yes, wouldn't you? I mean, that's the only answer, right?
Yeah, that's the only answer. And the other factor in this is, hey, they got a pretty good guy coming in for 2022 as well, Quinn Ewers, who is the number one overall player in the class of 2022. So, my sense of Quinn Ewers, and I have never spoken to him, but my sense of him is he is not lacking in confidence. So I don't know that if it's Kyle McCord as a starter in 2021, does that impact Quinn Ewers? Like, probably not. He probably still shows up and is like, I'm just going to take this kid's job. Like that's kind of the mindset. And that's the mindset Kyle McCord's coming in with. Like, I don't know why Quinn Ewers wouldn't be coming in with it. That I don't think you get to be a 5-star quarterback without the mindset. Like, screw these guys. Tate Martell famously had some thoughts on Nick Starkel. You can Google those if you want. So yes, 5-star quarterbacks typically have a mindset of like, well, I'm the best player I've ever seen. So therefore, no one's going to beat me.
And you make a great example with Tate Martell about not giving in and not transferring.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Nick Starkel wasn't the one who chased him off, if that helps at all. For sure. Like, if there's a scenario where there's only one scholarship, one of these three guys is left at the end of this season, or, this time next year, only one of these three guys is still in Columbus, that's the scenario where it's Kyle McCord wins the starting job and the other two guys transfer. I don't think that's particularly the most likely scenario. I don't think that's, I would be pretty surprised if that was the case, but, I mean, we have seen craziness in the transfer portal. We have seen craziness with quarterbacks. We have seen, when we were at the, the 2018 Ohio State Michigan game, I don't think that, middle of the 2018 season, I don't think that you or I was necessarily thinking like, yes, none of the people who are on the roster right now are going to be on the roster in like 3 months, because that was that summer, it was Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow, Tate Martell, and Matthew Baldwin. And by, so that was like, April of 2017. by January of the following year, all 4 of those guys were gone. Like, or the following year, because I don't remember when Baldwin transferred exactly. But yeah, we have seen some craziness. So you can never say never. But yeah, I would be fairly surprised if that is how this shook out.
You mentioned, and I agree, Quinn Ewers has, like, he's not afraid of Kyle McCord or anything like that. But if we're just talking about being worst case scenario, like, he could probably see, well, if CJ Stroud or Jack Miller is a starter this year, they'll be eligible to go pro 1 year after I'm there. Like, I can sit for a year, one of those guys will go pro, and then I start as a redshirt freshman. But if the guy 1 year ahead of him wins the job, now he's like, well, I'm going to be sitting at least 2 years. And now this is certainly the worst case scenario for him as well. So, Tom, I wonder if they should even allow Kyle McCord on this team. Nothing good could come from it.
Will Kyle McCord be the downfall of Ohio State football? My column. Yes. Spoiler alert. No, he'll be fine. It'll be fine. Everything's going to be fine. One other interesting note on the Quinn Ewers front, just because this is something that was like, it was shaping up to be the, like, every 3 days we have a new thread on our Ask the Insiders board asking about, is Quinn Ewers going to flip to Texas? The answer is now no, because Texas just landed the number 2 pro-style quarterback in the nation, Malik Murphy. He is out of our Junipero Serra High School in California. And so Steve Sarkisian has his quarterback now for 2022. So that at least, now we can change those threads to, will Quinn Ewers flip to Oklahoma? So that'll be exciting. We'll get some different threads. Yeah, see, I just spoke it into existence.
Does Oklahoma have a quarterback committed yet in 2022?
I don't know. Not as good as Quinn Ewers, I think, is the answer there. So, but no, that's that was a frequent topic of consternation on our Ask the Insiders board as soon as Sarkisian took the Texas job. And no, so it looks like, at least for now, Quinn Ewers is perfectly happy at Ohio State, and Steve Sarkisian will be keeping his grubby mitts off of him. So that's one good piece of good news.
And he can sign in what, like 10 short months?
Yeah, I mean, sure, right around the corner.
So go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he can visit before then, but he'll get to sign in 10 short months.
And if people haven't yet, go ahead and listen to Tom's interview with
Carter Smith
about just the lack of visits. A high school player can't go visit. Brother couldn't visit, ends up having to go to D2 instead. So, Tom, we now let's compare Ohio State quarterback situation, Michigan quarterback situation. Boy, this is a tough one for me, because none of these 3 guys is Cade McNamara. I think we can agree to that.
None of them are from Long Island. That's true.
How do you say it? Long Island, right?
Long Island. It's like lawn, like your grass, and then guy land.
Okay.
Long Island.
So now, are these 3 guys in line to start or online to start? How is that?
They would be online to start, because that is how you that's how you say it. Yes.
I don't care for that.
I know you don't care for that. That's why I do it.
So where are you going? I'm probably going to go here with Ohio State, because they have their star rating equals 14. And that's the real measurement. Michigan,
yes.
Their star rating equals 11.
11, yes. Yes, both have a 5 and a 4, but then a 5 and a 2. So,
and 11 more than 9.
That is that.
14 is also more than 11. I'm a math.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm interested to see the JJ McCarthy, Kyle McCord competition head to head. I mean, that is going to be one of those things that we just are watching for 3 years, probably. I think the big takeaway there, and I'm going to have Alex Gleitman on the Morning Scoop to talk about this on Friday morning. For his fantastic series on the stories behind the recruitments. Both of those guys wanted to be Ohio State quarterbacks, and Ohio State, Ryan Day picked Kyle McCord. And based on Ryan Day's track record, I think that probably speaks pretty highly of Kyle McCord. So, and that's the potentially the 3rd guy for Ohio State this year and the 1st guy for Michigan. So I think there's your answer. And
McCarthy feels like he was lied to by Ryan Day and Ohio State, which just adds more drama to it. And it will be interesting to see when JJ McCarthy's like a 3rd-year starter playing against Ohio State, and Kyle McCord's maybe his 1st-year starter. And McCarthy has all of this experience, and then he loses to McCord once again. Not that they've ever played against each other, but in a sense, then he would move to 0-2 against McCord and maybe 0-3 against Ohio State. Who's to say?
Who's to say? Yes, this is going to be. I'm already excited for another year of Ohio State versus Michigan Tale of the Tape shows, and boy, with you mentioning Ohio State beating Michigan there, bold prediction shows. I mean, this is. I was just thinking last night, like, we get to do another round of all these things I love to do. I can't wait. And season preview, positional previews, spring practice, like I'm all, and hey, there's basketball and other stuff too. Mm-hmm. Pretty fun.
It's just too bad that there's so much football, like, just thrown in the fall. Like, then you can't do preview stuff because you're just reacting to stuff that's actually happening. It's kind of annoying.
I'm always baffled at the fact that our off-season shows are always so much longer than our during the season shows, because it's like we have all this stuff to talk about during the season, and then we go 45 minutes, and then what are we at, an hour 15, an hour 20 right now? I mean, yeah. So somehow the off-season shows, when it's like, what are you going to talk about? I don't know, quarterbacks or something, and it's like, oh, an hour 20, sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
I did like the fact that when we were planning the show, like, well, we'll do basketball and then we'll just throw in quarterbacks because it won't take that long, because it's just it's three guys, and here we are, going on to nearly an hour and a half. So let's end it, Tom, unless you have more to say.
I was just going to plug my morning scoop show you mentioned the one with Carter Smith earlier in this week. I also had a really fun one with Nadine Muzzerall, who, if you don't know that name, she is the Ohio State women's hockey coach. Had her on Thursday morning show. She has built Ohio State's program from basically the dregs of the WCHA. They were 6-22-1, I believe, the year before she took over, and now they're number 2 in the country. They have. She was an assistant coach, a player and assistant coach at Minnesota. Won 5 national championships there. Between those two, Minnesota was kind of the measuring stick program for her, and they have beaten Minnesota 4 out of 6 times they played them this year. And Ohio State's now the number 2 program in the country. Number 1 is Wisconsin, and they have beaten Wisconsin 2 out of 4 times. So, I mean, this is as national championship contender as national championship contenders get. As it is, they are the real deal. Had a really, really fun conversation with her. She's a lot of fun, pretty open, pretty candid about things, and had some really fun stories to share. And I mean, that is a program, like, I know women's hockey does not get a ton of attention, but that is a program that is worth keeping your eye on. Go follow them on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, and keep an eye on them, because that is a fun team, and a team that is probably going somewhere pretty special.
I did like when she was the assistant coach at Minnesota, and Ohio State is calling her, and she's like, Ohio State is calling her, like, almost like, telling her husband, like, oh, because Ohio State's women's ice hockey was not good. She's like, Ohio State's calling me, I don't know, and they're bad, and he's like, this is Ohio State, go fix it, basically. She's like, oh yeah. It was interesting relaying of the interaction there, because he had this very different viewpoint of Ohio State as a former football player than she did.
Yeah, I think he was former Big Ten football player. I think he played for Minnesota, I would assume. So, yeah, and as a football player, you definitely have a view of Ohio State, and and she has, to her credit, she has listened, and she has done exactly what he told her to do. Yes, no, that was. I said, boy, that was some very helpful advice. I'm really glad he's around to tell you how to run your program. But it is very impressive. They were what a 6-22-1 or something in league play, and then her second year there, they went to the Frozen Four. Like, yep, all right, that is what fixing it looks like, and they have been able to stay at that level and kind of keep building. And last year, I mean, they won the WCHA Final Faceoff, which is their kind of conference tournament, for the first time in program history. And we're getting on the plane to go play Minnesota in the NCAA tournament. Like the bags are on the plane, they are at the airport, and they get a call like, so COVID happened. And they didn't get a chance to play the NCAA tournament. So there's a little bit of unfinished business, I think, this year as well. So really, really interesting story. You guys, I think, will really like hearing from her, and you guys will probably hear from her again, because I like talking to her. So you'll probably hear her again at some point in the next month or two.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It was a good listen. And make sure to check out the rest of BuckeyesScoop.com right now. Alex Gleitman just dropped his podcast. I was on that, Tom, so I can plug that.
Mm-hmm. How many WCHA titles have you won, sir?
Well, combined, me and Alex have won 0, but we did just a positional preview, like right through the quarterbacks, through the special teams, real quick, and just some preview stuff. So check that out as well. If you are not yet a member of BuckeyeScoop.com, I would recommend it. Become a paying member. It's well worth your money. The Ask the Insiders board, some new updates going on, winter workouts, COVID protocols that had some people up in arms about what the Big Ten may or may not be doing. So if you are the type who wants to get upset about the Big Ten, if that's your jam,
I'm listening.
We are the place for you. So there's a bunch of other stuff as well. Bill Green has his weekly chat going on right now, which is always fun and which is always a ton of pages and crazy, interesting stories. So you can check that out as well. Other than that, Tom, it's time to go. Thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you next week.